Hey, welcome back, everybody. New caliber, new rifle this time around. What you're seeing here is a introduction of this rifle after we've already shot the range footage that you're going to see in a few minutes here. Everything on this rifle right now is the same as when I shot that footage, minus the addition of this muzzle brake. So I'm going to run this through real quick, or run you through this real quick. This is a Mossberg Patriot Predator, and they might have some other handle for it, in 7mm PRC. A lot of people like to bag on this rifle, this model, maybe not particularly in this caliber, but there are plenty of people that have had mixed results. Some people have had great accuracy right out of the box, factory ammo, which is what I found with it in my initial testing of one box of Hornady Precision Hunter 175 grain ELDX loads. I had to make some modifications to this right out of the gate. And I'll tell you, I bought it at a big box store, had to order it. It came in, I was notified, went to pick it up, looked it over. Everything looked pretty good. I knew there were some things I would want to tweak, and that didn't bother me. What did bother me is when I got home and put a bore scope through it and saw the amount of copper deposited in the rifling, I was shocked. There is no way that it was merely a few rounds fired at the factory that collected the copper that was in this bore. So I reached out to OF Mossberg and Sons and said, hey, how many rounds do you guys shoot to proof a rifle before you send it out the door? And they said, anywhere from 2 to 5. I said, no chance that you shot a dozen or 20 or 25 or 30 rounds? And the rep said to me directly, if we had to shoot that many rounds with it, it would never have made it out. So somehow, between the time it left Mossberg and the time it got into my hands at a major retailer, somebody decided to play with it. I'm pretty certain that it wasn't sold and then returned, because then it would be a used rifle. And I think the retailer would know the risk they run in advertising it as new. I think that somehow during the supply chain or at a store, an employee decided to have some fun with it. This is my assumption. I'm not positive. It had way too many rounds through it to be a normal stock brand new rifle. Just not possible. That doesn't bother me so much, the use of it. What bothered me a little was the stock channel. This stock on the left side of the rifle was touching the barrel, barely. But if you put any upward tension on it whatsoever, it would make full contact on that side. Knowing all the problems that other people have had with particular rifles with stock channels and these plastic stocks, I disassembled it. I inletted the stock. So now there's a good 1.5 mm in there. You can't make it touch unless you're really just ripping on it to intentionally make it touch the barrel. You can, but outside of some serious effort, it's not going to happen incidentally. So I did that, then retorqued my screws, which call for a very light torque, and I went higher than that, but I won't say how much because I don't want to be responsible for anybody else cracking the plastic, what would be bottom metal that holds the magazine in this. It's a plastic unit. You put too much torque on this and draw it down too hard, you'll crack it. It's probably the number one replacement part Mossberg offers for this rifle is that plastic insert. The other thing I did was rip the Picatinny rail off. I cleaned it up real good, polished it a little bit in a couple spots where it was slightly rough, and I bedded it and reinstalled it and torqued it to spec onto the receiver. I don't know that it would have been a problem, but I really didn't like the way it looked right when I took it out of the box. Took it off, found a burr or a small booger from anodizing on it, worked all that off of it, then bedded it with Loctite, and then Loctited it down and torqued it to spec. I'm pretty confident with it now. So I know I went and put this giant, ridiculous 7 to 35 power arc and telescope on it. Yeah, that's not necessary for shooting groups. I would have been fine at like 20 power, but the scope that's going on this is going to be a 4 to 16 power for hunting. And it's nice and lightweight for a 30mm. It doesn't have adjustable turrets on it. They're cap turrets. Great setup for hunting. For shooting groups at the range, I wanted something that dialed in a little tighter. And like I said, frankly, 20 power would have been good enough for me with the reticle that comes in this that has a very fine dot for the center. I like that for shooting groups. But 35 power is not going to hurt things. It's just I have to sit there and look at my pulse in the rifle scope when I'm shooting. So this isn't staying on here. It's impractical. It's not made for this. This is just for our testing and shooting groups. The other modification I made was the trigger. This has an adjustable trigger in it. When you disassemble it, you can see there's a setting screw. That screw is already adjusted because everywhere else I looked, it showed that from factory, that screw will sit flush, and it was actually turned out about 2 turns. So my feeling is somebody at a retail store or this supply chain somewhere actually disassembled this, turned the trigger screw out a couple turns, and then reassembled it. It should not have been in the condition it was. I actually let it down a little bit more. I have not put a scale to this trigger, but I'm going to call it at a clean 3 pounds. It's right around 3 pounds. There's nothing wrong with this trigger. For me, it feels a little longer than others. That's just me. I mean, I've got a couple triggers that are real nice, so I'm maybe a little prejudice over regular stock triggers. This is not as good as like a Savage Accu trigger that comes in their Model 12FV. I have one, I adjust it down, and that's a beautiful trigger. This one's close. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't have a ridiculous amount of creep or over travel. It's not like one of those ones where you'd watch some AR guys videos and be like, look how much this and that. It's not very detectable. It's just not a boutique level trigger. And for the price of this rifle, which is the thing I should discuss next, you certainly shouldn't expect that. This rifle came out of the store at like $450. That's pretty ridiculously low. It's got its handicaps. This is not the toughest plastic stock on the planet. It's not the best recoil pad, but you really don't need a better recoil pad anyway. Yeah, the fit in here was terrible and I had to make adjustments. I didn't like the Picatinny rail. That's just me. It might have been fine. It might have shot 2,000 rounds and never moved a smidgen, but I wanted to make sure. The bolt was not rough when I got it, but it's a lot smoother now. Now that I've had time to work with it, it's definitely not too bad. This bolt is pretty smooth for a factory $450 rifle. I mean, I don't know what more you want. I know there's people that don't like the fit and finish on a lot of these. I'm not after fit and finish. I'm function over form always, and this rifle fits the bill for me. My son's likely to hunt moose with this. Well, is going to hunt moose with this September up in Newfoundland. The magazine, cheapy plastic, but what more do you want for $450? And it also, your bottom metal is bottom plastic. I'm not a fan of that. If I had my way, it wouldn't be done that way, but that's the way it's done, and it cuts down on their cost, which gets it into a customer's hands cheaper. Anytime you shave a penny, you risk some peril, right? Like, there's a point of diminishing returns on savings when it comes to buying a rifle. This should do everything I want it to do at a price point that you could easily swallow. I didn't want to go out and get another precision rifle or long range rifle, however you want to describe a rifle such as this. This was because we're going on this hunting trip, and the guy that's going to be using it needs a good rifle, and it needs to be more than, say, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with shooting moose with the 308, but I think the 7 PRC in a heavier weight bullet is going to do a much better job. So, not bragging on this rifle. This is poor man's hunting machine for sure. The muzzle brake that I put on it. So, this is not a poor man's piece. This came off this is a Christensen Arms titanium muzzle brake. They're actually pretty pricey. They only weigh like 2 ounces. They're great. Not self-timing, so I had to put washer shims in it, and it should do a good job. I haven't shot it yet. Do I really think the rifle absolutely needs a muzzle brake? No, not really. I don't think the recoil is that bad on this. Then again, I'm used to shooting a 338 Lapua Magnum, and so that makes a lot more energy. This is very comfortable, but it's there. When it goes off, you can see it, you can feel it. You will come out of your sight picture for a hair second, depending on how you're set up and what you're doing. If you're laying prone on a bipod, I think you can keep everything right in the glass, even without a brake. But I think the addition of the brakes is just going to make it easier. And I already had it sitting around, so why not? It's not going to hurt anything. If I find that accuracy is somehow degraded after putting this on the end of the barrel, like if the additional tension or weight has an effect that is not desirable, then it'll go back off, and this little thread protector cap will go back on it. That's that. So I don't think there's a real reason to rain on Mossberg's parade about this rifle. I don't find this rifle offensive in any way. It's not a high-end beauty queen. Wasn't designed to be one. When I look at it, I think, oh, I could do this or that differently. Fine, so be it. I should just go over the stats real quick. So it's 7 PRC, obviously. It's a 24-inch barrel, threaded muzzle, obviously, because I was able to put a brake on it right away. Comes with that pick rail on it. Everything as you see it, minus the scope and spur mount there. It weighs about 6 pounds, 9 ounces, empty unloaded, which is pretty good. It's decent weight rifle. It'll be easy to carry around, especially because it won't have this 3 pounds of glass sitting on top, but it'll have like 1.25 pounds on it. So this whole thing loaded with a scope and everything, I don't know, 8 pounds ish, like fully ready to go. That's not bad. Yeah, it's going to be some long days of carrying it, but That's what a sling is for. I think it's going to be just fine. I do like the stock camouflage, and I like the Cerakote color a lot. I'm not a big fan of all black rifles for going hunting. I think that animals don't understand camouflage, and I don't think we understand how their eyes work. But one thing is for certain, solids, especially dark solids, stand out like a sore thumb. An all black rifle, probably no bueno most of the time. I don't know if that'll be different being in the northern short timber, that subarctic tundra up on the north end of Newfoundland might not be as much a factor. I'd rather it be a zero factor. So this is good. Not going to let off a lot of glare, doesn't reflect a lot of light. For me, decent stock, decent Cerakote job. I'm a fan of it. All right, here's our components for this first video. We're going to be focused or concentrating on this Berger Elite Hunter 195 grain EOL Extreme Outer Limit bullet. Real sexy bullet. High BC. What are they calling for here? Berger's usually spot on. They've got a G1 BC, a 755. That's pretty darn good. They call for a 1 in 9 barrel twist minimum. We've got 1 in 8, so we're good that way. I already checked stability in the calculator. Really good. We're going to be loading this in Peterson brass, brand new. We're not going to be touching this brass other than just minor prep, deburr chamfer, and trim the length if need be for uniformity, though I don't think we will. And if we do trim, we're not going to trim much at all. We want to leave these long. We're going to be loading with Retumbo, H1000, Ramshot LRT, and Vitervori N565. So next you're going to see our loadout. The only one that we're going to shoot groups with today is going to be the LRT, because that is the one that in a couple other people's testing gave them the best velocity overall. So I want to start with that one. We're only going to shoot 3-shot groups with this rifle. That is a pencil weight barrel. It heats up quickly. From everything I've seen, people get thermal point of impact shift to the 4th and definitely in the 5th round. So for my purposes, there's no sense in wasting the powder bullets brass time on those extra shots. We're going to do 3-shot groups. That's the way it goes. And we're going to be using gold medal match GM215M primers. There we go. Okay, well, beginning stages of loading for this rifle. This rifle's already shot 20 rounds of Hornady Precision Hunter 175 grain. Shot it real well, grouped real nice. I just wanted to get through that to see if we had real problems. So what I first went through with the rifle was I grabbed an OAL gauge and your modified case. I bought one rather than making one. I know if you make one, you get slightly more accurate data, and there are a couple of good reasons for that. But I'm going to say all I wanted to find was, where are we touching the lands? And in this particular chamber, seated all the way in, I took 10 measurements, and I ended up at 2.6635, where this bullet is contacting the rifling. So subtract 20 thousandths out of that. I've got a desired seating depth of 2.6435 to give me 20 thousandths. However, mag length for this rifle, this magazine will accommodate 2.629 cartridge base to ogive. So that's where we're at. We're loading to mag because that's what we're relegated to. We don't really have another option unless you want a single feed, and for a hunting rifle, that's useless. So in other words, our bullets are going to be making a pretty darn big jump, like 35 thousandths. Pretty big jump. That would worry me or have me skeptical in other rifles, other loadings. However, I've watched another guy load this exact round for this exact rifle, and his jump, I believe, is around 35,000. So knowing that, and actually I didn't even look to see what it was for the factory ammunition. That factory Precision Hunter may jump crazy amounts. We don't even know. But that's where we're at. So we've got a cartridge base to ogive length already worked out at 2.629 inches. The fired Hornady brass came out of the rifle at 1.888. And our brand new Peterson brass here sits at 1.8860, which is fantastic. If everything is correct and that Hornady brass grew to its maximum potential, which I'm not positive that it did, but if it did, that means we're starting out 2 thousandths off the shoulder for headspace, which is wonderful. And if it turns out that that's the case, I will probably always bump these back to where they came brand new at 1.886. Well, time to deburr and chamfer. Real light this time, just a little bit, just a kiss. Brush these out real quick. Shouldn't be much going on there. Didn't take very much off. When I cleaned up, I had very little brass on the bench. Just going to make sure. While I'm doing that, answer a question that's going to come up. Why have I not sized this brand new brass? And I get it. A lot of people get brand new brass. The very first thing they do is size it, trim it, all that stuff. The reason I'm not sizing this brass is twofold. Well, maybe it's more than two. Peterson brass, in my experience, and I have loaded many calibers with it, A1, they've never let me down. I did go through a dimensional change in wall thickness on necks between lots in 6.5 Creedmoor Peterson brass at one time, but that wasn't a major to do anyway. Peterson's very consistent. When I measure all these cases with a comparator tool, I'm getting the exact same shoulder height measurement. When I measure the bodies of these cases in a couple different spots, down closer to the web and up closer to the shoulder, getting the exact same measurement. So my point, I guess, in saying that is these are very consistent. Case to case, they're almost identical. When I weighed them, they were incredibly close. When I measure them for overall length, they're incredibly close. So I don't see a reason to run these up in a die, when in the end, what I really want them to do after this first firing is expand to match my chamber close as possible. And I know that typically one firing doesn't get that done. Typically it'll be two. With Peterson, I've found that you get real close on the first firing. If you're loaded, medium hot or on the hotter side, maybe our lower charges won't push pressure necessary to make them really stretch to match that chamber. But I've found that typically Peterson does a good job. So no interest in working them in a die when they don't need to be. And I'm looking for them to expand to my chamber dimensions anyway. These bullets measure 284. No surprise there. Well, if you squeeze them, 283.5. And not knowing whether I'm going to end up turning the necks on these casings or not, I decided that I would use a mandrel to expand these to 282. It gives me 0.002 interference, holding force, neck tension. You call it what you want. I went with 0.002, and I found that even though I don't have a gauge, I found that the seating pressure, the amount of pressure or horsepower I'm putting on this ram to seat that bullet, it's very little. It's very smooth, consistent. All of these felt exactly the same. And I get it. You're a man that has nerves in his hands. You can't always determine what that number is, what that amount is, and that's correct. But what I can say is each one of these felt like the last. So this is what I'm doing in this step right now. Typically when I'm working on expanding, I'm using a dry neck media. And this is a great delivery method here. This Imperial, it's got little ceramic beads, and in there is your basically graphite lubricant. What I found is that this brass is so close to where we're going that it simply doesn't need any. This is a TIN covered mandrel, and it doesn't scarify. It doesn't leave any mess in the neck. I don't know if you can even see that. I think it's probably impossible to get a good look at it. Everything's nice and smooth. So what I've been doing is run a case up in, the second time, pull it out. That's it. What I've gotten us to is, well, real close to 0.002 from the OD of that bullet. We're not going to trim any length today, even though they're not perfect. It's Peterson brass. Peterson makes great stuff, very consistent. The one measurement that will always differ a little bit on new casings, in my opinion, has been neck length. I'm not going to trim them for this first firing. This is all going to get done after we've resized them and see how much they grow and how much we'll need.
and how much we might leave. So how long I might end up leaving them. I'm a bigger fan of a slightly longer neck if I can get away with it. So I don't want to touch any of these now. And if if you really wanted to make them all even, you'd be trimming them all to the shortest casing. And then you'd have a whole box full of short necks. I don't want that. I would rather have many that I have to trim next time around than come up short. And there are times that a chamber is generous enough where the expansion of that brass ends up shrinking your neck. And you come back and resize, and you're like, why are my neck shorter? Well, it's because the entire casing is shorter because it got fat. Oh, well, now we need to get them primed up. It's been a little bit of debate on the 7 PRC and whether you want to use a large rifle magnum primer or a large rifle primer. Some of that debate has to do with the fact that this is a pretty short, stout casing. There are some very smart people doing some study right now on powder column width versus length, propellant type, and sequence of ignition, I guess you could say. The intended pressure curve or spike created. And in their testing, some people are finding that they get better consistency, better extreme spreads and standard deviations using a regular large rifle primer, say a Federal 210 as an example, rather than these 215s. We're going to use 215s in this initial testing and see what we get. I have no problem making that change down the road or having a comparison once I get a load that I like. And I think that that's what I'm aiming toward here. We're going to find a load I like and then likely play with the primer situation to see what our numbers do. All right, so I got my seating die in and set up. And I thought I'd take time to mention that the die set that I'm utilizing here is a Redding Type S match die set. It's a full-length die and a seating die. And the full-length sizing die, you obviously can place a bushing inside, which I actually have the bushing for here somewhere. I haven't utilized it yet. I will be when I go to load these casings a second time around. And when I do that, I'm going to be crushing the neck down to whatever the prescribed amount was there. I'm using a 310 bushing. But then it'll be going back into a mandrel because I want to get it to that 2000. So that's what I'm looking to do. So you've got a 284 bullet and a 282 mandrel after you have already sized the neck. So the neck will get sized down when I full length size the case, and then it will get expanded with a mandrel to my correct neck tension interference. So I just wanted to point that out. I also bought the VLD seating stem for this. The one that comes with it is pretty close. It's a good match, but it's nowhere near as good a match as the one that you can purchase for VLD bullet. With that shape ogive and the length and how narrow it is, it works out real well. So I recommend if you're going to load heavy or long sleek bullets like these VLDs, EOLs, whatever you want to call them, those bullets, they don't like the stock stem as much as they like the VLD stem that you can purchase separately for it. So get some other questions out of the way real quick. Why LRT? Well, this powder, because it is slightly slower than other powders that people are utilizing in this caliber. In other words, there's a lot of H1000 Retumbo Reloader 26, which is unobtainium, other powders that are faster, but most of those people are shooting 175s and some in the 180s. This is a 195 grain bullet. You're going to need a slightly slower powder to get that slightly longer, slower shove to build that pressure to get the velocity that you want. Did I come up with that on my own? Absolutely not. I have watched other people conduct testing, and I've studied other people's testing that they've taken the time to type out. God bless their souls. The LRT seems to be a pretty good powder for this bullet weight in this caliber. So what I'll be doing here is loading 2 rounds of each, 72.5 grains all the way up to 75 in half grain increments. So we're going to start out at 72.5. We'll make 2 of those, 2 at 73, 2 at 73.5, etc. So my seating depth comes out really well each time. Looking for 2.6290, getting it right on the nose. Real happy with that. Not a whole lot of seating pressure or force. Also nice. Powder change. On to H1000. Only loading 10 of these half grade increments. We're just looking to see what we get velocity for pressure. This is not, we're not going to be shooting any groups with these. This is just to see where we go. My suspicion is LRT is going to get us more velocity for pressure. H1000 is probably going to be next, and Retumbo may be the worst, or I could have 1000 and Retumbo backward. People have had some interesting results, sort of a back and forth deal. H1000 being extruded powder, our little sticks look like chunks of pencil lead. They don't like the meter so hot, so there's going to be a little more time in getting a exact 62 grain charge out of this super trickler right off the rip. I've also never run any H1000 through this machine that's had no learning time, so right now it's in AI learning all it can about how much is trickling out per vibration, etc. I set the vibrating as high as I could to try to cut down on some of the wasted time. Well, it should bump to 62.5 grains. Okay, and on to Retumbo. Another larger grain extruded powder. Makes it a little tough to hit dead zero on the super trickler unless you've done a tune-up and got it all dialed in, which I haven't done. This is the first time I've ever fed Retumbo through it, so we'll see what happens here. Another one over by 2/100ths. I'm not going to concern myself with that. Case feels nice. They're not real full, but they don't have a huge vacancy in them. The LRT is actually a little better. All right, now working with Federal N565, which I think is probably going to end up a little on the fast end for our application here. The more suitable powder might be 570. We're going to find out, though. We'll see what we get out of this. N565 is an even larger extruded powder than the Retumbo and H1000. So being that it's first time in the machine, same problem. It's going to be tough to get an exact number. We're working from 63 grains up to 66.5 in half grain increments. 565 is a lot bulkier. It takes up a lot more space inside that casing. I'll take it. Okay, out to the range, make them fly straight. We got our normal setup, shot marker in place, and a target camera up and running. There will be a lot of barrel cool time in between strings of fire, or in between shot groups in this case. stuck right in there. That one went back up.
So here we're looking at our brass back on the bench, and we've got no pressure signs to speak of. There is the slightest primer crater, but this is the same as I had when I was looking at the Hornady Precision Hunter 175 grain ELDX loads that I fired through it. Everything here looks the same. So in other words, we're not seeing any pressure signs whatsoever. So we started the day real good, a 0.33 inch group. What are you going to say about that other than good news? LRT at 72.5 grains gave us 2,688 feet a second, an SD of 3.3, and an ES of 8.1. Good stuff. 73 grains bumped us up to 2,709 feet a second, SD of 21, ES of 46. Poor numbers and an equally poor group. They go hand in hand. 73.5 grains give us 2748, SD of 11.6, ES of 28, and a 0.44 inch group, 2 in 1 hole. Love it. Too slow. 74 grains gave us 2,759 feet a second, SD of 5.3, ES of 10.7, a 0.47 inch group. Again, I love the group, just not fast enough. 74.5 grains give us 2,787 feet a second, SD of 6, ES of 14.4, another 0.47 inch group. Love the group, still too slow. 75 grains give us 2,812 feet a second, SD of 4.3, ES of 9.9, but a 1.43 inch group. And you can see the big old point of impact shift that took place there as we went up in velocity. N565, we shot 63 grains through 66.5 grains, low velocity of 2,584 feet a second, a high of 2,723 feet a second. What's interesting is we shot a 1.07 inch group with those 8 rounds. Pretty fantastic. That tells me we've got room to explore in N565. I'm also going to get my hands on some N570, but I think we've still got room before we hit pressure. We may get to our desired velocity and still maintain that type of accuracy. I'd love to see that come through. On H1000, we shot 62 grains through 66.5. We had a low velocity of 2,567 feet a second, a high of 2,747 feet per second. A decent looking group. The first 6 rounds stacked in real tight there. I was real happy with that. But then as we went up in velocity, 7 and 8 spread out low and right. 9 went back toward the initial group, and 10 was parallel the initial group, but to the right of it. In Retumbo, we shot 64 grains through 68.5 grains with a low velocity of 2,594 feet per second, a high of 2,823 feet a second. Ugliest group, but it's really not the point of it. Here you've got 4.5 grains of powder between all 10 of those rounds. Oh, and the first round was actually off the paper. I had dialed to move the point of impact lower on the paper because we were going to be off the paper on some of those rounds, no doubt. There is still room here to work with Retumbo. I'm certain of it. In the next video, we're going to be loading hotter in this powder. So as a wrap up, I'm real happy with how things went today. We found that we can push these hotter, and because we found no pressure signs today, 0 pressure, 0 heavy bolt lift, no problems to report whatsoever. I love that LRT was shooting such nice tight groups, minus those 2. And the last one we shot was our fastest. And, you see that point of impact shift up high and to the right. I'm hoping that continuing on from there, going hotter, that we'll draw them back in tight again And maybe that's where our point of impact will end up, is higher and to the right. Doesn't matter to me. We'll dial to what we need. I just want to get those groups back to nice and tight like they were. We shot a .33, a .44, and a pair of .47s. That's a good day in a budget rifle, first time out in low development. Real pleased. We're going to go up in N565. We're going to go up in H1000, and we're going to go up in Retumbo. Likely load a few in Retumbo for groups just above where we left off this time, and see if we can get away with something there and make some magic. In the next video, I'm also going to be introducing some hammer bullets, 162 grain hammer hunter tip bullets and 170 grain hammer hunter tip bullets. I don't know what I'm going to do with powder combo yet for that. I'm going to figure that out down the road here. I'm waiting on some N570 to show up. So if that gets here in time, it would be nice to be able to load all of this and introduce N570. If not, that will be in the third video in this series. So that's all for now. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you being here. Until the next video, take care and shoot straight.